Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is Ship Updates. Now, interestingly enough, we actually have an update, but it's not quite a ship, but it is something that might impact a number of ships. There's been an image circulating of this new gray Cat Buggy. It kind of says industrial on the side. It doesn't really look like a combat vehicle to me, though some people have kind of interpreted the rig next to the cockpit as a weapon. It looks to me like this is actually like a mining laser thing, and I believe that was, something that had been hinted at in the past a couple of weeks ago, that there was going to in fact be a mining buggy. It's got little cargo boxes on the side. So, is it a mining tool, cutting tool? It has some interesting possibilities. Maybe it can be swapped for a weapon, who knows? But this is probably something that we're going to see in the not too distant future. We've been getting some interesting sales recently, so who knows? Along with the release of this patch, this may go along with it. What is it going to fit into? No one's really sure, but if it indeed is fully operational and in-game ready, it could probably drive a few sales, and it does seem interesting. Pirate applications, I couldn't guess at. I mean, we'll have to know more about it, and I'm sure that we'll know more in the future, but if it is indeed fully, not flight ready, but drive ready, could be interesting. It's definitely going to be something to watch. But moving on, with 3.10, we're supposedly getting some much broader changes to the game. So with Inside Star Citizen, they released updates that are planned for 3.10 that affect turrets and the flight model. Specifically, atmospheric flight seemed to be the focus. And I know that a lot of people are concerned about the impacts of these changes and what they, kind of foretell for the game. I am obviously somebody who does fall into the more likely to be concerned than, optimistic pile. I know that, in the past, we have had some disastrous implementations of just systems that were obviously kind of half-baked and not really thought through. And I mean, there comes a point with certain things being inserted into the game where if the players are correctly picking out the problem without having even touched the system and gone, well, have you thought of this and have you thought of that, and what do you... I'm not too sure about that. When there's that level of concern and it's fairly broad, it's probably a good idea to kind of take a step back and say, are we really thinking this through? Overall, the idea of, kind of creating an impact for wings in atmosphere and making them affect the flight of ships, at the surface, it sounds like a good idea, but then you have to think about ships like, what is this going to do for, let's say, the Caterpillar? That's only got a wing on one side. How is that going to handle flight? How are aerodynamics going to affect many ships that currently are kind of accepted as being able to fly in atmosphere and being able to fly quite well? What kind of impact is this going to have on this ship? And, they outline certain things where, if you're missing a chunk or an engine off of one side or a wing off of one side, it's going to drastically affect how the ship flies. We have ships that are just naturally built that way, that are kind of asymmetrical. What is that going to do for those ships? And so I wish they had gone into more depth about the impact on, especially larger vessels or asymmetrical larger vessels. I mean, they touch on it, but they're at the same time, they're pretty vague about it. So that's kind of where my concern lies. Do I feel that, if you own an 890 jump and you're going to land it on a planet, they say you're going to have to really think about it now. So should you get rid of that 890 jump? I don't know. Because, this could be just another hover mode. This could be something that they implement and they go, well, that didn't work. And then they give it up, right? So who knows? I mean, the flight model changes. If it's a disaster, then at the worst, it was just time wasted. which is nothing new. Now, one of the more promising things that they were talking about was, in fact, the changes to turrets that they are going to be implementing with 310. And certainly if you own a larger ship, like a Caterpillar, like anything that has a turret on it, even a Cutlass, this is good news because they're making turrets a little bit easier to use. They're making them, giving them their own UI, which is actually a point that we're going to come back to in a little bit. But overall, making turrets more effective, and the aim is to make a turreted ship, more dangerous, more of a threat, more something to be considered rather than just engaged willy-nilly, which at face value, as someone who advocates towards larger ships, especially turreted ships, someone who is a big fan in that regard, and certainly that's no secret if you're watching this channel. Initially, I am very, very hopeful about this. This kind of looks like a good thing to me. My concern with it, however, is that it may be a little bit of an overcorrection, but this is definitely something I'm willing to wait and see it evolve in the universe. Certainly when you see them testing, a lot of the testing that they're doing is based in Arena Commander when they're testing these turrets. And Arena Commander is really one of the poorest forums for testing combat in Star Citizen because it doesn't allow for speed. It doesn't allow for distance. And that's one of the things that you have to remember in Star Citizen is, maybe this hammerhead isn't just sitting there doing 20 meters a second. Maybe it's doing 500, 600, 700. So the idea that turrets are too difficult to use or too easy to use, if you're basing that off of the Arena Commander experience, then I think that you're starting from the wrong place when you're trying to balance that experience. And a better balance would be the PU itself, having these ships either trying to defend a location or being chased and seeing how the turrets work in that environment. But, this is just the footage that they happen to show us, so I'm perfectly willing to wait and see. Now, overall, the turret thing, yeah, it's great. It's fantastic, but it does come with a slight attached gripe to it, because there was one statement that they made when they were talking about the turret improvements that, it just kind of like, I was just like, you do understand what you're saying, right? Because, turrets, great, fixes, fantastic, sure. But when you made this statement, you kind of opened the door to some other problems in Star Citizen. And, I would say problems that are much more pressing. Let me just go to the clip.
One thing that we learned in the past is that you cannot ship a new feature if you do not have appropriate UI support. So for the turrets, we created
And that, that is kind of the point that I want to touch on. Landings in Star Citizen. Recently, we saw that there's going to be improvements to the landing system. It's going to guide you more towards the landing site to avoid, flying into restricted space and whatnot. Oh, that's fantastic. That's good. That's nice. Completely wasting time, though, because we can navigate the restricted areas perfectly fine. One of the biggest problems in Star Citizen right now, and it's kind of an elephant in the room, and people should be talking about this more, is the fact that there is zero UI support for landing in the restricted or the constrictive, I would say, as a better word, landing zones that exist in Star Citizen. There has been zero evolution in landing support systems since we got 3.0. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. It is, in fact, easier to forego any UI whatsoever. Go to an external view of your ship with zero UI, zero instrumentation, and freehand fly your ship into a landing site than it is to use the existing UI, which almost equates committing suicide with your ship or flying your ship into a landing zone nose first and then trying to nudge it around until you kind of fit into that space. The easiest way to fly a ship should not be outside of the cockpit with zero instrumentation, especially when you've invested so much time and so much effort to make the instrumentation visible in your cockpits, blocking a certain amount of the view and ultimately giving the players nothing. You know, this is a huge problem in Star Citizen. You know, this is, you know, in a weird way, it's become almost this thing that we just kind of accept, that it's easier to land your ship from an external view than it is to land it from within the cockpit, even outside of landing areas, just on the surface of a planet, just to make sure you don't bounce off of a rock or something like that. I mean, other games like Elite Dangerous have kind of figured this problem out and have kind of solved it and walked away from it years ago, but Star Citizen is just putting zero effort into it. And it's kind of a fairly important thing, because yeah, it's great to fly spaceships, but at some point you're going to have to land them. That's kind of part of the, you know, that's a core part of the game. And the fact that no one's put any effort into this, at least that is visible to us, the backers, is kind of troubling. I mean, even if you think about Squadron 42, like, how are you going to just land a plane onto a carrier? Are we just going to all just switch to external view and just kind of do it that way? Or are we just going to have an autopilot feature that just kind of drags us into a station? Right? Like, how is this going to work? This is like a core feature of flight systems. This is a core feature of UI, especially when you're operating a spaceship. And externally, at least to us, the backers, has apparently been zero effort and zero progress on this front. What's up with that? You know? Anyways, I mean, that's my complaint. That's my rant about that. But apart from that, the flight changes, we'll see what happens. I mean, that's just the way it is. We'll see what happens. And the turret changes look pretty darn cool. They look pretty darn cool. A little bit worried about, you know, just saying how we're going to manipulate the bullets so that they move more towards your target. I'm a little bit worried that might be a bit of an overbalance or an overbuff, but we'll see how it works out. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.